Hi.
Hey, thank you
How's
so
it?
much for joining me, Keely.
Thank you for having me. This is really exciting.
Now, you have branded yourself as the sober hype girl.
Yes.
What does that mean? Why is that?
I want to be able to hype people up. I think we go through life feeling like we're not enough. And I feel like I've been given a gift of the most beautiful energy, and I want to be able to help people. We never know what people are going through in their lives. So for me to be able to hype people up, especially whether that's sober curious, whether they're, sober already or just going on that journey, I think everybody needs a hype girl. So
Yeah.
that's why.
And sobriety, that's something that you mainly focus on. In your experience, what are some misconceptions with sobriety?
Misconceptions. I think people think that you can't be fun. People think that you can't be confident. Um, People think that you can't do the same things that you maybe did when you were drinking. And on some level, that may be true, but I think it's not necessarily about not being able to do those things. I think when you go through your sober journey, you change and you don't necessarily want to do those things anymore. And once you connect with who you are as a person, you realize that actually you can be fun without alcohol, as you well know, and you can have confidence as well without the alcohol.
Yeah. I feel like with sobriety, something that's very common is at least everybody I've met believes that you need to have to go through something. You've had to be an alcoholic. You've had to be this one person to then go on an adventure with sobriety. Do you feel like that's true, that people have to push it to that edge, or that sobriety is also something that people can sort of choose to do?
Choose to do. I don't think you have to hit rock bottom to decide that alcohol isn't serving you. We're brought into a society where we're taught that alcohol gives us something, which is very clever marketing techniques on the big drinking companies out there. We're taught that it relaxes us. We're taught that it gives us confidence, that it makes us fun, that it actually adds something to our lives. And there's this misconception that you have to hit rock bottom to want to change that. That's not the case at all. I think now, as we understand more about alcohol and we grow in a society where we're big on well-being and personal development, for me and what I tell people is, it's not about hitting rock bottom. It's about getting curious. It's about thinking about the impact that alcohol is having on you, uh, your sleep, how you show up for yourself on a daily basis. I know that for me personally, if I hadn't stopped drinking, I wouldn't have the amazing sleep that I have, or I wouldn't be as productive as I am as a person. So I don't think you need to hit rock bottom. You just have to get curious about what is filling your cup and bringing joy to your life versus what is actually taking from that joy and that fulfillment.
Incredible. I love one word that you sprinkled in there, which is curiosity. This is labeled the I Wonder podcast, which is all about breaking the norm and breaking past, the norms that society is indoctrinating into us, and bringing about that curiosity and wonder. And another thing I'm also trying to push forward at the moment is the art of facing yourself. So I'd love to push that forward to you within that sober curiosity, which is also something that I've heard you say a lot outside of this podcast as well. Within that sober curiosity, how has that allowed you to face yourself within your journey?
If I wasn't sober curious, I would never have been able to face myself. Part of the reason I drank was so that I didn't have to face myself. I we touched a little bit on ADHD before we started this, and for me, alcohol was the only time that my mind felt quiet, where I felt like I could just be me, and I used to say it was the only time I felt free. What I didn't realize was in all those times, I was running from myself because I just didn't love the person that I was, and that was because growing up, I'd been conditioned or, I thought that I was a problem that needed to be fixed. I didn't feel like I was enough, that I fit in anywhere, and I think I was scared of the person that I, on some level, know I could always, always be, but there was just this fear of what if I don't fit in? What if nobody likes me? And alcohol was my way to cover that up because it just allowed me to mask the person and be the person that I thought everybody else wanted me to be.
What was that person?
The mask? Well, it was whoever they wanted me to be. And I think, when again, I've been toying with the idea this week, and this is a bit of a tangent, around something I heard about when we're born and we know who we are, like truly know who we are on a deep level. Like we know what our boundaries are. We're very aware of everything around us. However, as we grow and as we age and we have experiences, we go to school, we have our family environment, we have our friends, all of our environment, we lose that. And because our need to fit in and our need to feel loved and that attachment is often greater. So we think that if we please this person or we're doing this, that, and the other to be able to fit in, then we're going to be good enough and we're going to be okay. However, the more that we do that over the years, the more we move away from who we actually are. And the more we just have the ability to please everybody, whatever that looks like. So for me, it was, I didn't truly know who that person was that I was running from because it was anybody that anybody wanted me to be so that I could feel loved and fit in.
So you feel like you would cater your personality situation by situation?
Absolutely, yeah. If someone asked me to do something, even if I didn't want to do it, I would be, it would be a fear of not being liked. So yeah, I would go along with that.
And what's changed?
Um, Firstly, I stopped drinking was the catalyst for that, and that journey started to get me to where I am now. I had the always been interested in psychology and how our mind works, and I think part of that goes back to feeling like I was something that needed to be fixed. And probably up until maybe 3-4 years ago, I truly believed that. And now, since I've stopped drinking, I've dealt with a lot of the trauma. I've moved through a lot of the stuff that I needed to move through. And I actually like the person underneath that. And that's what's changed. And that it's interesting because probably I would say the last year to 18 months is when I've really come into my own. And that's when things have started to happen for me, not to me. But also, the more I am my weird, wacky, awkward, out there self, the more people are drawn to me and the more people want to connect with my energy.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about this one question. I feel like there's been a lot of times in my life when, and it even still happens now, and I feel like I sort of lose contact with myself.
Mm.
I remember when I was traveling, I was walking around and I was traveling with my partner and our best friend, and being the only male in that situation, I very much had to give a lot of myself to make sure they were all safe at all times. And I remember for a month there, I really lost myself, and I walked past the mirror and I didn't even see myself. I didn't take myself as a human for like a whole month, and it was a really interesting process. I was like, well, I'm actually alive. And then reminding myself that I was alive and forgetting what it felt like to be a human. Have you ever had a situation like that, and how would you describe a life where you feel like you know yourself even just a little bit better? Not fully, we never know ourselves
Oh
fully,
gosh, no.
fully, but where you at least feel like you're living in your body as compared to a life where you feel like you might be living someone else's life.
I think generally a lot at the moment, which is really, really beautiful. I would say that I am currently more present in my day-to-day life than I think I've ever been. I spent a lot of my time feeling that way, I think. And maybe this resonates with you, but there's like a numbness, and it's kind of like just going through the motions, and you're not necessarily present, but because you're so out of alignment, you don't necessarily know you need to bring you back into that presence. I think for me now, where I am, I have got to a point that I have got a lot of systems in place to make sure that I'm trying to be present and that I can kind of outsource my brain. I think a lot of that also comes back to knowing who I am as a person, my values, what my boundaries are, and also make sure that I'm filling my own cup as well before I fill anybody else's, and that I have that time. So yeah, that resonates with me in a sense of, I think now is more so than I've ever been present.
Yeah. When you were, like, in it, when you were in the mess of all of it, at least for me, it felt, like, impossible
Mm.
to sit down, to be still for a moment. If I was eating, I was smoking, I was doing anything to distract. Mm, when did that situation come for you where you finally got the space and time to count your values, to count who you were and what you wanted to be, and what was that like?
I think that's probably the first time. I don't think that just happens once and then it's done. Like,
Yeah.
the first time was definitely when I stopped drinking. Again, it
The
was
first day, the first week after, or the
I would
first
say the
decision?
first decision after I stopped drinking
Yeah.
was I didn't know myself, like my values, and we see this word everywhere, like your values, and everybody's like, yeah, yeah, like I know. And then actually, when you discuss that on a deeper level, people are like, oh, yeah, no, I don't know them. I have no idea, because we spend a lot of our life people pleasing. And I think in, for me, it was like I'd seen this and I wanted, at some level as humans, we kind of want to believing something, and we want to be able to have a set of rules on some way to be able to live our life by. That's why I think, society, there's like good, or there's right, or there's wrong, and all of that kind of stuff. So for me, that my values were that. And that was the first thing after I stopped drinking, was like, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to figure out what my values are. And values are not just about who you are in that moment. The most beautiful thing is that you can create whatever that looks like
Mhm.
in terms of who that person is that you want to be. How do you want to live your life, and what does that look like? And who is already doing that, and how do they do that? If you know them in person, ask them that question and say, I think it's really inspirational how present you are. How do you do that? Like, what practices and what do you put in place to be able to live your life that way? And that gives you some really great insight. Obviously, if there's somebody that may be famous or is a movie star or whatever, you can't really stalk them down.
Mm,
But generally, there's stuff on the internet, or there's people around you that inspire you in that kind of way.
for sure. I loved a few of the points that you just spoke on values there. So I used to teach at a TAFE in Berwick. I was teaching personal development studies to year 11s and 12s when I was only 1 or 2 years older than them, and which was a funny situation. But I was going through values through the first couple of weeks and was talking exactly how you were saying there. One that I really found that helped me find my values was the first time I really, really considered values. I learnt it from the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
The best book.
It's pretty good,
Love.
Mark
Yeah.
Manson. And yeah, he was discussing the girl who partied and partied and partied and partied and what she valued. And it was like not judging her, but being able to look objectively at somebody's life, their past, or how they're living that week, that month. And if they've consistently been living like that, which is what I was the party girl.
Mm-hmm.
And from an outside point of view, it's very easy to identify that person's values.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that to myself when I looked at my own life. And at first, I wrote the values that were true to my heart. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I value my family. I value my future. I value being the best version of myself. I value being a sponge. That was a huge word I used to use, to be a
Love
sponge.
that.
And then I wrote all these up and wrote paragraphs about them. I was feeling so motivated. And I looked at myself and I looked at this list and I was like, I'm not doing any of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it might have even been that night. My night routine was to grab the bong out of my wardrobe and smoke a couple of bugs before I went to bed. And as I was reaching for it and packing my cone, I looked over at my values list again and I thought back to this book and I remember reciting through each of these lines and then playing it to my present action of what I was about to do. How is smoking this bong going to affect my relationship with my family? My family hates me smoking. They hate me doing this. How is this going to affect my future self? Or it's not going to make me any smarter. How is this? And I kept on running through my list and it was a no. It was
Mm-hmm.
no for all of them. There was no wiggle room. And I was like, well, shit, this is how I want to live. So I'm not going to smoke. And then I didn't just put my bong away, but I took the chocolate out of the fridge. I went and
Yes.
threw it out and, started the next day without a bong.
Yeah.
And it was a day closer to my values. I also want to circle back on being able to, find someone's values from just how they're living. My values at the time were not living up to my list that I wanted them to be. And then also I was obsessed with David Goggins as well, absolutely studying his books, and he didn't even disclose his values, but it was very clear to see what his
Yeah.
values were in
Mm-hmm.
strengthening himself, pushing himself to the wit's end, finding his utmost edge, strength, discipline, honor, and vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I want to be like that. So I can't keep on living like all the rock stars out there whose values are sex, drugs, rock and roll. Yeah, that's something that completely changed my life, and now I'm very confident to say that I completely lead with my values and the way in which I live my life. Whenever it's a decision, my partner will always see me just close my eyes or go silent for up to 5 minutes, and I'll run by my list of how I'm going to respond. Sometimes she gets a bit angry because I can't respond quick enough, but I'm always running through, who am I? How am I going to respond to this?
I absolutely love that, and it's interesting because I've been speaking to a couple of clients on something similar, and something that I've actually done myself this year is I've created an alter ego, and so my alter ego is Boss Bitch.
Boss bitch, okay. Stay.
And yeah. And I'm like, okay, so if I'm sat on the couch and I find myself like scrolling on my phone, then I'm like, okay, what would Boss Bitch do? Boss Bitch would not be scrolling on her phone right now. Like, she'd be recovering or she'd be doing something. So that has really helped me, because then it's like and it's that instance, if you're not where you want to be in terms of those values, another way to help you get there, create that alter ego and ask that question, like, what would they do? Or go, like, I love that you have a list in your head. Go through it. Like, yeah, what is that? How I want to live my life?
Yeah.
And if it's no, then you stop doing it. And I honestly believe that since I've started doing that, and, it shines with you as well, the people are drawn to you because you are your brand. You are what you say you are. You live in accordance with how you want to show up for yourself and other people.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
What helps you identify with the values that you wish to be? There's action, but I also feel like in the early stages, the first week, 2 weeks, even months or year, it's easy to forget,
Mhm.
especially when habitual actions come on, like your friend saying, "Hey, let's go for a beer," or "Let's go for a wine." And it's like, yeah, okay. Or whatever it might be, even the small ones, like the habits we have when we get home and quickly jump on the couch and hop on a scroll. How did that process go for you in those first moments, learning in your body and mind to identify with these new values and like this new identity even?
Yeah. So, firstly, I think there's a switch, and that switch is this is how it's going to play out. What that switch doesn't account for is our brain, and our brain is wired to take the easy route out for us. It's wired to conserve energy. So, any way it can conserve energy, it will. And we all have so many daily habits that we do every day without thinking. So generally we get up out of bed, our routine is generally the same for most people, and they just roll through that without thinking. The reason for that is because our brain is just not necessarily thinking, you're just going through the motions. So the first instance of that is you have to create new neural pathways within your brain to be able to change your easiest route to the new neural pathway, but that does take time. And it will just be one day and all of a sudden it'll be like, okay, that's done. But the first step is acknowledgement. So, first off, you're like, okay, this is how I want to live. Okay, so then maybe it's a day, 2 days, you kind of, sometimes you may forget that. But then when you remember it, that first thing is like, okay, great, now I've remembered it. Then you just continue to make yourself aware of it. And then you start making the changes, because the more you make yourself aware of it and do the action, the more it comes into play and the easier it is over time. The other way to be able to do that, and going to talk about a book that James Clear, Atomic Habit, which was an absolute game changer for me in terms of goal setting and understanding what that even meant. I thought I failed at everything, didn't realize that I just didn't have the right systems in place. So I think also that systems is a huge one, around putting the systems in place to allow you to achieve your habits, but also even habit stacking as well.
Mhm.
And when I do, if I want to do this, then I'll do that. So if I want to have a drink, I'll go and do 10 jumping jacks, something like that, and replacing what you're wanting to do as well.
Yeah, awesome. Something I had to do in those moments was I would, like, let's say there's a scale.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I would hop into the middle of it and start stepping onto the right path, it was so easy for my identity and my yearning for connection as well.
Yes.
Because as soon as the 2 weeks that I decided, I went sober for my first for 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, something like that. And through those 4 weeks, my best friends, my brothers, people who told me that I'd ride or die, they'll be with me to the day's end, stopped messaging.
Mm.
Because I wasn't messaging, I wasn't coming to the house, I wasn't going out, I wasn't hitting them up for deals or anything else like that. And by that fourth week, I was just yearning so much for connection, and I tipped back and I relapsed. And I was on that trail for 3 weeks and then tipped back over when I got hospitalized.
Mm.
And after I got hospitalized, I realized that I was standing on the edge of a fence, and I could so easily slip into one way or the other. But if I'm on the edge of that fence, then I'm in the danger zone regardless,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm in one zone where I'm going to fall and it's going to be into good things like community and breath work, but I'm going to lose the person I was, to lose my friends, lose everything that I worked so hard building.
Mm-hmm.
I built like this huge friendship group up from nothing, and it was a friendship group that I've always dreamed of. We had fun, laughs, we were tied with gangs and had all the protection we needed, and I thought I was living the life.
Mafia
And
lifestyle.
yeah. So I decided to, especially within my space in my room, to tip the scale by removing the bong, but also removing my TV, removing all the habits that were in place there that were me being lazy. And I turned my room, and not everybody has to do this, but I turned it pretty crazy. I wrote so many pieces of paper all over my mirrors, all over the walls about new belief systems. And I had a mirror, one of those sliding drawer mirrors, right opposite where I'd wake up. So every morning I'd wake up, and that would be the first thing staring right at me, and I'd read through everything on the list. Another thing I ended up adopting and doing was I made a whiteboard and put a mirror in the middle of it. I wrote all around the whiteboard my values, my identity, my small-term goals, and my long-term goals. And then also a quote for the day, and then a list of what I was going to do that day. And I'd repeat that to myself in the morning and at night with writing what I was going to do the next day. And I did that for 2 years straight.
Wow.
I'm not religious as much with it anymore. I feel really grounded within myself at the moment and using other practices like breath and journaling. But oh my God, if I did not use that every single day, I know I would have, anytime I didn't do it, if I was away for any reason, I would always feel so weird within myself. If I didn't have the time to do it, I'd be in my car and I'd repeat it out loud. What are my values? How am I going to show up today? Who am I? And just reminding myself every single day. And that completely transformed me.
That's amazing. That's a lot. That is dedication, and that's inspirational. That's like amazing. In fact, you'll actually notice I've got like a couple of notes on my door that are similar. So I've got yes is no and no is yes.
Okay, why is that?
The premise of that is, what am I saying yes to? Because that means that I'm saying no to something else. And if I'm saying no to something, it means I can say yes to something else. So I'm being very intentional with what I'm saying yes to. And the other one is think less. So for me, I'm trying to outsource my brain as much as possible, because there's always like 10 squirrels running around at any one time. Hyperactive squirrels, let me tell you. So it's, how can I outsource my brain so that I can be fully present in whatever I'm doing in that moment. So creating the system so that I don't have to think so much. But also thinking less around judgment that people put on me, because people are going to judge me regardless. So also outsourcing some of that judgment from taking it internal, because they're going to judge me whatever I do anyway.
Yeah. They're going to judge you whatever you do anyway.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's powerful. Like when you think about it like that, we spend our whole lives trying to fit in, and the people that we try and fit in with, or people around us, are going to question, where they're going to judge us. Often that's because we're holding a mirror up to their behavior and it's something that they don't like about them, or they're going through stuff themselves and they're not ready to face whatever it is they're going through, but people are going to judge us. So what does it matter who you are?
Yeah. Do you mind providing an example as to no equals yes, yes equals no within your life, and maybe even within the sobriety?
Yeah. So saying yes to going out to an environment that would involve alcohol. So saying yes to a party or a night out would mean that I would be saying no to something that could potentially fill my cup and be more aligned with my values. So it's more, I think, around having those boundaries and knowing what that is. And then if I said no in that instance, then that would actually free my time up to be able to do something else that fills my cup. So again, another level of kind of asking that is, why am I doing that? Is it, am I doing something to try and fit in and to be liked? Or am I doing it because it's going to bring me joy and fill my cup?
Yeah. And as a sober person, Can you still go out? Are you still going out and having fun? Or are those scenes just something where you don't really touch?
Depends what scene it is. I love nothing more than to dance. So I would quite happily go out to a nightclub, a gig, and whatever that is, and dance my little heart out. I actually went to Revs on my
Revs.
42nd birthday
Love
at
Revs.
10 a.m.
Yeah,
on
oh,
the
10 a.m.
Sunday
sesh.
morning.
Yeah, nice.
And I just thought to myself,
Was that a 12-hour sesh, or did you arrive at 10 a.m.?
arrived at 10 a.m.
Oh, you
and
arrived with the sesh gremlins.
I was I was like, what the hell have I brought myself into? Because I'd
Yeah.
never been before. And I
Oh,
just
no way.
said, you know what? I want to dance. I've never been to Rebs, and I know they play music all day. So I got 4 of my friends and we went at 10 a.m. and I danced for 4 hours. I lived my best life and I came home. I wouldn't necessarily go to a club now in an evening because I value my sleep and I'm a bit of a nana, so I'm in bed for 8 p.m. But I still do stuff that brings me joy. It's just that for me, going and sitting in a pub for 10 hours straight does not bring me joy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I still do a lot of fun. And actually, I've just created a sober day out where we're going. There's a bunch of us, there's 10 ladies, and we're going on a wine tour that doesn't involve wine and not to wineries. So it kind of mimics 4 stops, but it's all around fun, connection, being out in nature, and growth. So, yeah, there's lots that you can do without needing to have a drink.
Incredible. I'd really love to break apart habits that people can adopt, or different ways and methods that people can adopt if they're very curious about sobriety,
Mm-hmm.
and even they're enjoying sobriety, they're enjoying their health. But September's coming up, party season's coming up. We're about to head into December's coming up. Not right now, obviously. We're into January now. But these party seasons are coming up, and they're young, they're yearning connection,
Mm-hmm.
and their whole identity has been based around partying.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much, maybe not having to be drunk or sloshed at a party, but these parties are coming up, and then these people don't want to miss them, but they don't want to sacrifice their health. Are there any, I guess, alternatives people can use if they still want to go out and do these things, but also don't want to risk their health or risk screwing up with this new level of sobriety that
Mm-hmm.
they wish to go on?
Yeah, for me, I drink sparkling water. That's my pleasure. I love sparkles, and sometimes I'll have maybe a mocktail. So there are a lot more places that are doing mocktails now, and a lot more places that are doing non-alcoholic beverages. I don't choose to drink non-alcoholic gin or non-alcoholic vodka because I choose not to drink. I don't want to drink something that mimics that, and that's my choice. However, other people may find that useful to have a drink in your hand and you're not having the alcohol, but it still tastes similar. A couple of ways that really helped me when I was going through these kind of stuff was I kind of set myself a limit in terms of time. So this is the time that I will leave, which was generally around 9, 10 p.m. when people started slurring their words and couldn't hold a conversation together. So it's awkward to be around them and you're not necessarily having that connection. I also, in these instances, set myself up for success before going out. So whoever I was with, I'd message and say, I'm not drinking. This is a choice. I'd really like it if you could back me up on this and you could support me. Because quite often you go and everyone's like, just have one. You're like, well, no, Karen, I don't want one. I've made this decision, and I think it goes back to holding a mirror up to their behavior. People want you to be in a situation where you're feeling that connection through doing something together. So that was a really big one, is set yourself up for success after. think about your habits, your alter ego. Like, what is it that you're wanting from this night? If you're wanting connection and you're wanting true connection, get really clear on what connection looks like for you,
Mm.
what that means, and where you can find that. Because quite often, and we touched on this slightly in our personal conversations outside of this, but also today a little, is that when you change, you actually realize that those connections are not necessarily the connections that you're actually craving, because on some level you're connected with them because of whatever your vice is, rather than a true connection and a deep and meaningful friendship. So what does that look like, and where can you find that community outside of that? I know that doesn't help in terms of like going out, but just something around that. Getting very clear on your why
Mm.
is a
I
big one.
totally agree, and so many of those have propelled into my own personal life when I was distancing my way from drinking. I also stumbled upon a community down in Mordialloc called Cool to Be Conscious, and I was religiously going to there
Mm.
for this source of connection. I was working carpentry at the time, but everyone in my company was, very much loved drugs, alcohol, and fish. So going fishing and also goldfish is like, that's all that I didn't. I knew fishing, but I didn't know much about goldfishes, which they love to talk about random.
Very random.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the
Um,
goldfish that you get
yeah,
at
that would have one of the blokes especially, love him. He had his whole house was just covered in tanks, and I was just obsessed with getting new grobblers and new feeder fish, and I didn't know anything about it.
wow. Now you do.
Now I know the terms. But yeah, I didn't have this source of connection.
Mm,
I didn't have any friends because all my friends were tied in that world. So I was very lost and confused. And I started going to this community, which had an activity where we could talk to somebody new every time we went and have cued conversations. And that was incredible.
mm,
It eased my source of connection, and also this, yeah, sober curiosity and also just curiosity. Um, I was this 18-year-old kid still with my rat tail and mullet, which I'm still rocking now, and was really, I was profusely sweating all the time. I was going through harsh withdrawals
mm,
from substance, but still turning up to this community sessions and feeling so amazing from it. Another piece I wanted to talk on was I went to a few bars a couple times when I was going through the sobriety journey, and there was quite a few times when one thing you said was setting yourself up
mm,
for success. And yeah, if there was at times if I would go and follow the old patterns that I would when I was using substances, like getting an Uber there,
mm.
like the way I would dress. If I wore an all white outfit, I knew I was done for, because that was my outfit for like
Love.
for absolute chaos.
Yeah.
Um, how I would, yeah, dress myself, how I'd wear my hair, how I would get there, especially. So I started to break all of them. I started to wear different clothes, represent myself differently, wear brighter clothes,
Mm,
and also drove there. At the time, I was on my P plates, so I couldn't have any alcohol in my system. Um, and if I drove there and I had to pay a fee, that doesn't matter because I'm saving it on all the drinks I'm not buying.
mhm,
And I don't trust myself to take drugs and or drink and drive because I'm just not that silly.
mhm,
So that always set me up for one earlier night and also a much safer night. And then
mm.
I was going to billboards a lot around then, and I went to billboards once completely sober, and it was a situation that I would have dreamed of. Like my best mate and another guy we just met, we just we were starting to chat to these three beautiful girls, and they were digging us, and there was going to be a whole night, and I was so sober and seeing through things through a different lens. I was looking around me and in most non-judgmental way, just look at you and go, "This is so disgusting."
Mm.
Everyone's so sweaty. These girls are gorgeous, but they're not as pretty as my mates think they are because they have their goggles on, and they're also very rude.
Yes.
And I don't
And drunk.
and drunk, and I don't like them that much, and I don't really wanna pursue this night, and we end up leaving the club, and we got to, like, when we're, like, driving back, they were gonna go back to the hotel, I was gonna go back with one, and I was like, "I really don't want to right now, like, you're kinda rude, and I don't think this is actually gonna aid to my life whatsoever." I know I'm driving home and got home around, like, 10, 11, and that was the last time I went to billboards and realized how dirty that club was, for one, and also just what those situations in the reality
Mm.
looked like without those goggles.
Oh, so different.
It's
So different. Yeah, if you go to a nightclub in the day that you're used to going to, like I worked in a number of bars back in the day, and going into those before anybody comes in them as well is just such a different experience. And being sober in them is, you've got everyone sticking to the floors, and it's just this, the toilets are disgusting, and yeah, it is not a nice environment at all. And you realize that when you stop drinking and put yourself in those situations, and it goes back to, you realize you don't want to be in those kind of situations anymore and want to spend your time doing nourishing things.
yeah. I'd like to take a moment to run it back to a little story. I'd love to hear your story of how this came about and where you possibly came from. Obviously, you didn't come from Australia, and yeah, what that looks like from who you are to who you are now.
So I'm from the UK. I've been here for 11 years. I was brought up by my grandfather, and my mum was around, and I have two younger sisters. Well, technically there's four sisters. I have two stepsisters as well. So growing up, there was five sisters, and I spent most of my time with my granddad. My grandma passed away when I was 8, and that's pretty much when I moved in with my granddad full time, and kind of we came quite very close, like really depended on each other, and we had a really beautiful relationship, and which was quite challenging as well on a lot of levels. And when I was 15, my mum moved to the US with both of my sisters and my stepdad, and things I think I was always kind of heading down a little bit of a rebel path. I think, I played into that I'm trouble and that I'm a problem that needs to be fixed. And when I drank alcohol at the age of 13, and I just fell into kind of the crew of that was the cool thing to do in my neighborhood. And there was also nothing else for us to do growing up in the UK. So I started drinking, and then my mum moved to the US, and I started doing a lot of drugs. I would quite often go out on a Thursday night and not come home till like a Sunday or a Monday. And when my mom moved as well, I think around that age was probably the first time that I acknowledged a sense of depression and anxiety, and was very up and down with that for much of my life, quite turbulently on a lot of occasions. I think part of it was a challenge of living with my grandfather, and when my mom went, because he was 2 generations older than me, and he was a man, he didn't necessarily know how to provide love and show affection on a lot of levels. So he was could be quite manipulative isn't the right word because he didn't know any other way, but quite bribing in terms of my time and how if I couldn't do something to him, then quite often he might not speak to me for a few days or even longer. So that was really challenging. I think a lot of the depression came from not being able to see a way out and not being able to change the circumstances that I was in at that time.
Yeah.
And when I was 19, I took an overdose. I still to this day don't believe that I was trying to kill myself and end it all. I just was in this dark, really, really dark place of depression and couldn't see any way out and wanted to stop feeling the way that I was feeling, which was very, very numb. And so from there, again, suffered depression quite a bit, went and did my degree, which was in psychology. No idea how I managed to complete that, but I did. Again, I was very, very up and down on an emotional level.
At what age was that?
I didn't go to university until I think I was 19.
Yeah. At the
19,
same age
20. Yeah, it was a very similar time. And whilst I was doing my degree, I was working at a travel agency as well. And I was selling cruises like over the phone. And once I finished my degree, I really wanted to get into psychology and help people. No one would take me on without experience, but nobody would give me that experience. And so I went full time in my travel role and got the opportunity to move down to the head office, which was outside, like an hour outside of London in a city called, they call it a city, but it was more of a very small city called Peterborough. And I moved there for 4 years, drank quite heavily again there, lots of ups and downs with my emotions. All through these years, I'd spent time trying to go to see doctors, to go and see counselors, to see psychs, to try and help me with all of that stuff. But I always found that I didn't do very well at just talking about that stuff and going back week on week to have the same discussions. I was very aware of things that had happened to me growing up and how I felt abandoned and all of that, and very aware of that, but just wanted to be able to move past that. And I guess it wasn't until I got into my late 30s and managed to get a coach that I worked through that myself. So just go back into, so I was in Peterborough for 4 years and then got made redundant. And by that point, I'd worked my way up into kind of top level strategy, relationship management with the cruise lines and the product team. And from there, I thought, you know what? I've never traveled. So I'm going to do some traveling.
Yeah.
I'm turning 30. Like, what am I going to do with my life? I've worked in travel for so many years. And I had a friend she lives in Brisbane now, but she was in Sydney at the time. She moved here the year before to become a nurse. And so I called her and said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm going to travel the East Coast. And I said, okay. The next day I booked a flight, came to Australia and met my husband, my ex-husband. And I met him 3 days before I was due to fly home. And we really just connected. And I moved to Australia to be with him 6 months later.
Wow.
So that's pretty much my life story in a bit of a nutshell.
Yeah.
And when I came here, there was probably after maybe 2 years of being here, I went on this real spiral of out of controlness that I wasn't drinking more or whatever. It was more so just up and down with my emotions. So much so that I actually I begged to see a psychiatrist because I didn't know what else to do. And he told me that I had bipolar and ADHD. And pretty sure I don't have bipolar. I think I was just going through a really, really dark phase of my life. And I think that alcohol probably added to all of these instances in terms of my depression, my anxiety, and just heightening all of my ADHD symptoms. And since I removed alcohol, I haven't had any depression, very minimal anxiety. Sometimes, there's instances where I'll go into a situation and I'll have a little bit of a panic. But other than that, I'm generally very good.
Yeah. And going back to your story, especially within the times before coming to Australia, and especially the situation of you living with your granddad and your mum not being around so much, what were the stories that were playing out throughout that time? What were the little beliefs that were niggling in the back of the head?
That I wasn't lovable, that I wasn't enough, that I was a problem that needed to be fixed and nobody wanted me around. I spent my life trying to fit in with everybody because I didn't think that I was good enough by myself and the person that I was. And I also thought that nobody wanted to be around me and that that was me and that I was the reason for that.
Do you mind if I ask, when you were seeing or begging to see throughout a lot of that stages, a lot of counselors, psychologists, were you in the belief system or the story that you're waiting for someone to help you, waiting for
100%.
someone to save you?
Yeah. I spent much of my life looking for a reason or an excuse for the way that I was, in the hope that I'd have answers. It's very rare that I share my story in terms of, and that may come across,
Thank you.
that you're welcome, but that may come across, it came across as quite awkward for me to share. And there is a reason that it feels that way, is because up until maybe around 2 years ago, I let it define me as the person that I was. And quite often, the first time that I ever would meet anybody, within 10, 15 minutes, I would share my story with them because it gave me an excuse for the way that I was.
Mm,
So that if somebody didn't like me, then I had a reason that people didn't like me. And so, yeah, I had spent my whole life searching for answers and hoping someone was going to come and save me. It's not until you realize that you have to save yourself, because nobody is coming to save you. Nobody owes you anything. The world does not revolve around you as a person, even though we all think it does on whatever level, because what we are living in is our reality based on our experiences and everything we've been through throughout our life and our environments and the people we surround ourselves with. So, yeah, it feels like the only thing that matters is our universe. But we can, and I think the beautiful thing in that is that we can change every single thing about that. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's challenging. Nobody's going to come and save us. So I think there comes a point where it's, what is that alternative? You continue to live your life in the way that you're not necessarily, you're people pleasing, which on some level I really believe makes you sick, because you're just so far away from who you are and you're not yourself. So choose your heart. What's harder? Trying to make changes and trying to change something that only you can, or living in this same cycle.
yeah. And what's the do you find there's a difference between letting go of that person and ignoring the facts and ignoring the past?
In terms of, say that again.
Do you find there's a difference between just ignoring the past and just embodying a new person rather than letting go of it? And
I wouldn't say I ignore it
mm,
because I believe that, and I don't have any regrets, and I've absolutely no hurt or anger towards anybody in my life and anything that's happened to me, because that is who I am today, and that's why I am the person that I am today, is all of those moments. I think the difference now is I just don't let that define who I am. I'm very aware of what's happened to me in my past, but that doesn't mean I have to let it define me moving forward.
yeah, and we share a lot of habits, especially within our past. I also used to have the habit, especially if you get too many drinks or anything into me, and you get me on a night after a night out, and that 5 minutes in, I'll tell you why I'm so fucked up.
Mhm.
I'll tell you the first trauma that stole my childhood away,
Yes.
and it's such a piss weak excuse to not do anything and remain small.
Mhm.
I like to define two different states, just being small or big.
Yes.
And I always choose to be big. My mind, my ego, a lot of the stories that I used to hold just want to keep me small and just want to keep me in that. And yeah, it was a pattern that I used to do all the time. And it was, yeah, it was like, it hurts when I see people do it to me now.
Mm.
Even within healing spaces after a breathwork session, it can be beautiful. Sometimes it can be very revealing, and sometimes they may not have shared it. It can be different circumstance, but sometimes it is just a pattern being
Mm.
like, I'm at this breathwork session because I'm stuffed up,
Mm.
because I've had this and this and this happen to me, and this is helping me release it instead of just knowing that and releasing that naturally.
Mhm.
Because the more and more that we talk and speak this as if it's our present reality, the more in which it's going to hold us to that present reality.
Yeah, 100%. I love what you talked about, being big or being small, and I think there's something really beautiful in that. I liken that to, like, that we have an inner child,
Mm.
and that inner child is trying to keep us small because they're doing everything they can to keep us safe and stop us from failing, essentially, and they want to know that they're safe and that they're loved, and and that is the person, that little child is the person that's got us to where we are today, and that's great. But, if we wanna move out, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and making those changes, and I think a lot of that comes with removing that victim mindset, and rather than being, "Woe me, my life is really challenging," which life is fucking hard.
It's not going to
It's
change.
it's not sunshine and rainbows, like, it is hard, every single day is hard, and it's what you do to just embrace it, regardless of it being hard, is what makes the difference.
Yeah, amazing. So, what are some takeaways that you wish to provide? Because you're taking on clients now and you're taking on a lot of epic work, like these stay retreats and other 6-month courses. What is the main message that you're pushing forward?
Oh my gosh, the main one is just that you are enough, you can be enough, and you have the ability to change whatever you want to change inside of you. And it is about small, little, consistent changes that are going to build things up.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for giving me your time and allowing me to talk in depth with your story.
Thank you. I've loved
Where
it.
can people find you and what's coming up?
So I'm on Instagram, the Sober Hype Girl. I I'm just in the works of releasing a retreat for December in Vietnam, which is going to be around fitness, fun, mindset, just connection and beautiful energy with beautiful women. And looking at also launching and helping people with accountability and finding a sense of community with that accountability to help people get to their goals. So working on that as well, and also a lot more of events. And I want a big thing for 2026 is community and creating fun and adventure as well with people.
Incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
that was so fun.
Congratulations for making it all the way through this potty. If you enjoyed, please do me a huge favor in posting this on your story and even texting me your favorite part about this podcast. Maybe some takeaways that you learned, anything you're going to be integrating into your life. And one step further, if you could even leave a 5-star review on this podcast, Spotify and YouTube. Thank you. Have the most amazing rest of your time. I'm Harvey, and keep wondering.